Welcome to the walkthrough of frequently made mistakes for my CS 891 course in the spring of 2024 for assignment 1C. So first and foremost, I said this every single time, make sure you document your code thoroughly. I've said where to go to look to find examples of how to document your code thoroughly. All the examples I go over in class demonstrate how to document code thoroughly. Code that is not thoroughly documented simply will not be reviewed. There's a number of people who didn't get very thorough reviews because you didn't document your code. So I'm not sure why you're wasting your time doing the solutions and then not getting reviews by not documenting your code, but you've got to get in the habit of documenting your code. Very, very, very important habit to get into. So let's take a look at some issues here with the proxy side. This is on the client side for the search movies method. Please make sure two things: that you're using the appropriate string constant defined in constants.java here instead of using a string literal. And secondly, there's something important that's missing here that was covered in the frequently made mistakes video for assignment 1A and 1B. There's really no reason that you shouldn't know this by now. We've gone over it many, many times. So if you're missing these things, and that means one of several things. You're either not running the unit tests so you don't see the problem, or you're not taking the time to look through the frequently made mistakes videos from previous parts of the assignment. So make sure you do that. I'm not really looking at this code much anymore because I'm assuming it's correct, but if you don't get it right, you're gonna lose points on your final grading, which is coming up soon. Now let's take a look here over at the assignment 1C movies-EX implementation of the controller. Here, make sure you do the appropriate decoding with the web utils helper method to do that. Same thing down here. Make sure you're decoding stuff properly with the appropriate web utils helper method. Down here, this code, we're now moving into the part that's on the movies service.java file. This code is way too complicated and doesn't fulfill the specification comment. This should just not be like this. We've talked about this before. So make sure you fix that. And the key thing here is looking carefully at the comments where they give you hints like call a helper method. You do not want to be rewriting the code. This defeats the don't repeat yourself or the dry principle we talk about often in class. So don't be doing the code expanded in line all over the place. This code here also does not fulfill the specification comment above, which talks about calling a helper method. So read the specification comments carefully. Make sure you watch the video carefully. Really, these are just careless mistakes from not paying attention. This code, same issue. This code is duplicating stuff above. This code should also not be calling decode queries here. It does not belong there at this point. So again, make sure you're doing the right stuff. Read the specification comments, watch the videos carefully. This code is also way too complicated, not obeying the don't repeat yourself principle. This code is too complicated, doesn't fulfill the specification comment. Make sure, if you find yourself writing a lot of code in line that is occurring over and over again and it's very long and complicated, that should be a red flag that there's something seriously wrong with your implementation. I don't write code like that in any of my examples, and we've gone over this many, many times. You're just not paying attention to what's going on in the specification, in the skeletons, in the comments, in the videos, and so on. Down here, document the code. So otherwise I'm not going to review it. This code has several problems. It's doing the decoding here where it shouldn't be doing this. And also make sure you don't format it so it runs off the right-hand side of the screen. I think if you clean this code up, it'll be better, but you just need to make sure that you're compiling in a case-insensitive way. Speaking of which, this implementation here is not compiled in a case-insensitive way. So as you can see, it's got a problem. Make sure you fix that. Otherwise, I don't think you'll pass the test. Down here, use a method reference instead of a lambda expression. This is a general theme I come back to over and over again. Our unit tests struggle to catch that, so you'll just have to remember to do it yourself. But whenever you find yourself writing a lambda expression, check with IntelliJ and see if it'll automatically replace the lambda expression with a method reference, which it would do in this case. This code is also too complicated and doesn't fulfill the specification comment above, so take a careful look at that. You need to be calling helper methods here, not reiterating the code and violating the don't repeat yourself principle. Down here, this code should be refactored to call the find matches for patterns task helper method as opposed to what's shown here. This is, again, way too much extra work. There's no good reason for doing that. This code is incorrect. I explained how to address this in the preliminary walkthrough of frequently made mistakes video I put out. So make sure you're watching that. It's very frustrating when I go over this stuff, put videos out, and then people don't watch them and they replicate the problems. So when you do that, I have a tendency just not to review your code. This one I reviewed, but it's going to have some problems. This also has some problems where get matches for patterns is going to call itself infinitely recursively. If you take a look at the name of the method up here, it's get matches for patterns. Down here, you're calling yourself recursively. Don't do that. That should be a pretty much no-brainer thing you should get by inspecting your code and also by running the unit test. Down here, don't be calling find matches for patterns task, but instead call find match async using scope fork as it says in the specification comments above. Down here, don't be using the if-else statement, but instead, or an if statement here, please use the Java ternary operator. I described how to do that. If you take a look at Piazza, I actually cut and pasted the code that showed how to do it, so make sure you're following along with Piazza. Down here, don't be trying to do this with if-else, but instead you need to add a method called something like throw no such match exception to the no such match exception, and that'll take care of the problem. Again, that's something you should be able to figure out yourself, but I gave you hints in Piazza. I actually gave you the code in Piazza. Down here, find matches async. This code is too complicated. You can just use the Java ternary operator here. This code isn't wrong per se. I think it'll pass the test, but it's more work than it really needs to be. Similarly down here, this code is also too complicated and doesn't fill the specification comment above. Please change this to scope.join as opposed to chaining these methods together. Please change this to scope.result. That's a deficiency in the unit test right now, which we will fix at some point, but for now, please make that workaround so they'll pass the test. Let's take a look now at a problem with find matches for patterns task. This code is simply too complicated. You need to call the appropriate helper method that's defined below and as described in the specification comment above. Now let's take a look at find matches async. This code is incorrect. You don't want to be, I don't know what this is trying to do, but you don't want to be making a new structured task scope, shutdown on failure, .get here. That doesn't make any sense. So take a careful look and see how you can simplify that code quite a bit by leveraging other things that are going on here in this method. Here's find match async. Make sure you, first of all, you document your code. I'm just not reviewing code henceforth that isn't documented properly. Secondly, what on earth is going on here with the completable future? We haven't talked about using completable future in this assignment. This assignment is not dealing with completable futures, so it's dealing instead with the structured concurrency mechanisms in modern Java or very modern Java. So make sure you think carefully about what we're doing and don't try to slide in completable futures, which hopefully are not passing the tests. I hope they don't pass the test. And then down here, make sure you use the Java ternary operator. Instead of using the if statement, this will clean up a lot of the extra ceremony associated with this code, which can be much more concise. And then finally down here, as usual, get in the habit of using method references like objects, non-null, instead of using a lambda expression. So those were the issues I saw in assignment 1C for my CS 891 course. The assignment is due on Tuesday, so you've got to hit the ground running and address these issues here shortly. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them to Piazza or ask them in office hours.